Welcome back, friends. We are here once again for Week 8, ROTOWORLD's DFS Building Block Show. I am John Daigle, joined as always by Ian Hartitz. Ian, Week 8, how you feeling?
Great, John. This time next week, we're going to be halfway through the season, man.
Halfway there.
How fast it's come and gone.
And the lull is slowly taking over, but still, we are here. We are energized because we are now talking about the Week 8 slate. And per usual, we want your questions both on Twitch and in the YouTube if you're watching. And per usual as well, we like to start with the Thursday night game because we'll forget to talk about it at the end if we hold it off. So, Ian, we have what some consider to be a bit of a drag of a game between the struggling Washington team against Minnesota. What do you see happening in this game, really?
Yeah, 16.5-point favorites for the Vikings. That's more points than the Redskins are even implied to score. So not exactly shootout potential. But look, I think there's only one person on Washington's side that you really need to feel like just good about as a fantasy option. That's Terry McLaurin, because we need to remove last week, that San Francisco-Washington game, just from our mind. It never happened. It was a complete mud bowl. Like, do not take any stats away from that game. If we ignore that, Terry McLaurin, 5 catches, 125 yards, a touchdown, 562-1, 671, 351-0 against Stephon Gilmore, 4-102. The guy has done nothing except ball out since the first game of the season, and now he's facing a group of Vikings cornerbacks that, honestly, we don't need to fear anymore. Like, look, I used to be a big-time Xavier Rhodes stan back in 2016, 2017. It's 2019 now. It's not just Marvin Jones that balled out against the guys. Like, truly, not Rhodes, not Waynes, not Alexander. We don't need to worry about these guys. They've allowed the 8th most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. Fire up Terry McLaurin with confidence.
So does that mean you're going to Terry McLaurin in your captain spot, or is there another in particular person you're eyeing?
I do like him in the captain spot, but
because
I'm not saying you have to.
Is the key for the showdown.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying, like, if you are going to have a Washington Redskin player in your lineup, it should definitely be Terry McLaurin. Fair.
For my captain spot, I like two choices, but one in particular is Olabisi Johnson, who some may have not heard of, but made noise in the preseason, a rookie, of course. And without Adam Thielen in this game, we saw Adam Thielen leave once he hit that wall that's entirely too close to the end zone in Ford Field. And then BC Johnson came in, and for the 3 out of 4 games now, since he's been active, he's gotten 4 catches, 8 targets last week in place of Thielen. And now he's going to essentially be an every down receiver because he's not coming off the field. He is the second option. They don't want to play Laquan Treadwell, which is why they went to multiple tight end packages, which is what lent itself to their, like, Kyle Rudolph first touchdown of the season and increased Irv Smith usage.
Love it.
BC's going to be on the field as an every down player because they're going to go heavy with multiple tight ends and 2 wide receivers often. So I think that's a terrific pivot option at the captain spot for much reduced salary to Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I know Rudolph got the touchdown last week, but I thought just as notable was Irv Smith also having 6 targets. He hasn't gotten to play much this year, but their rookie, Irv Smith, is very, very good. And I agree with you with Olabisi. Fun stat I found, the Redskins this year are the #1 defense in DVOA against #1 wide receivers, number 32 against number 2 wide receivers. So, we saw it with Deshaun Jackson in week 1. We saw it with Taylor Gabriel in prime time. Redskins are pretty good at shutting down whoever they're really focusing on, but number 2 option and beyond, not so much. And the only thing I'd add for just showdown specific slate is Wendell Smallwood at 1,800. I think
Mean Machine actually asked Wendell Smallwood. He wants to know about him.
I would not trust him in season long, but showdown slate, 1,800 salary saver. Adrian Peterson is going to try to play this revenge game with a highly sprained ankle. Chris Thompson's out. There's a very real chance for re-aggravation.
And
early.
It's not just game script.
Yeah, for sure.
It's terrible. Like, you don't want to roll out Adrian Peterson for 20-plus carries. Madison has a better opportunity to just get that backup work as he's done in Minnesota's blowouts and just run wild more so than Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I would rather play Madison than Adrian Peterson.
Absolutely.
Showdown.
But again, thank you for joining. We are here to talk about the Week 8 main slate, though, across the DFS industry. Continue bringing your questions in. We'll read them as we go along here. And we will be using the toolkit at rotoworld.com/DFS if you want to follow along with our projections, starting lineups, and the points per dollar value tool, as you'll see on the screen right there. So, Ian, why don't you get us started here with your quarterback building block?
All right, my cash quarterback of the week is Mr. Kyler Murray. And okay, so I said
against New Orleans too.
Against New Orleans. And look, I said before that we need to take that Washington 49ers game with a grain of salt. Very similar with the Cardinals-Giants. I mean, that was a downpour for most of the afternoon. And I don't think we're going to see the Cardinals working with a 14-point lead after 10 minutes too often. So just ignoring Kyler Murray. I mean, he had 21 pass attempts in that game. Before that, he'd not thrown the ball fewer than 32 times. So we know he has the passing floor. Again, I don't see them jumping out to a big lead over the Saints and getting game scripted out. And the guy's running the ball. I mean, the first 3-4 weeks of the season, I think we all were like, what the heck, Kyler? How come you're not running the ball more? 3 straight games with double-digit carries. Only Lamar Jackson has more games with double-digit carries. Only Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards on design runs this season. Kyler has the safest rushing floor of any quarterback other than Lamar Jackson, and we know he throws the ball around all game too. So, yes, the Saints have been a good defense, but I don't think they're this group of world beaters we need to necessarily fear because they've still allowed 24-plus points in 5 of 7 games. And right now, their group of cornerbacks, particularly in the slot where the Cardinals like to attack, are ridiculously banged up. P.J. Williams suspended 1 more week. Patrick Robinson pulled a hamstring. He's looking doubtful. Eli Apple had that weird knee injury. It's looking like he'll play, but maybe not. So, banged up group of cornerbacks. We got the rushing floor. Give me Kyler.
Nice. It is impressive because they've transitioned from the air raid to an air run offense, but they've done it successfully. And I yelled for a second there. I was shocked you wanted to play Kyler against the Saints. But then we go to my building block. I came in the office this morning, and then you were like, Daigle, what is this name? Because Ryan Tannehill is not only cheap across the board, he is in an even better matchup than last week when he threw for what was the Titans' best quarterback performance of the year by far. The Bucs, as we know, are a pass funnel. They've allowed 52.5 running yards per game to opposing running backs. However, 304 yards a game to opposing quarterbacks. It could not be better for Corey Davis and A.J. Brown alike in this matchup. The Titans also implied to score 24 points, and yet the Bucs are implied to score 21 points. I think this game shoots out. I think it goes at double-digit points over its total because I don't think either team can stop the other. And Ryan Tannehill, like I said, performed great. Per NFL Next Gen stats, Tennessee's wide receivers averaged 3.2 yards to separation with Marcus Mariota under center, which is great. Ryan Tannehill, however, was even better than Mariota in that single game, and yet the Titans' wide receivers only averaged just under 2 yards per separation. I like Tannehill just to come out slinging, and at such a cheap cost and such a great matchup, it allows us to save salary elsewhere.
It is the cost factor. I mean, 5,100.
Yeah.
He is popping a little bit in our DFS toolkit with our dollar per fantasy points. So I do see where you're coming from a cost perspective. But look, my GPP quarterback is Mr. Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. And it was looking like in the beginning of the week that he wasn't going to play, but now we have Dan Quinn saying that he does expect him to play. And he's still kind of priced down, though, like $6K for a guy that threw for 300 yards in every single game this season up until getting injured last week, had multiple touchdowns in 4 or 5 of those games, had multiple touchdowns in 5 or 6 of those games. And now he's facing a Seattle Seahawks defense that we've talked about all season. Like, this is not the Legion of Boom anymore. Far from it. This is not a unit we need to fear. They have really one good cornerback, Shaquille Griffin, PFS number 9 overall corner. But Seattle, even when they had Richard Sherman, they don't travel their cornerbacks. So the Falcons, they can get Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley on whoever they want, which there's a small chance that think about Mohamed Sanu. When he gets his targets, like they're underneath, they're in the middle of the field, I think we could actually see Matt Ryan, like almost like Matthew Stafford this year, like when you don't have that high volume slot receiver in underneath areas, it forces you to throw downfield more, could actually be a net positive for the passing game, even though, Sanu is a good talent. So I think he's going to be under-owned because of the injury. People worry about it. He's a quarterback that doesn't really move anyway, so I don't think it'll affect him as much as others. And again, this is a guy that has almost a 300-yard passing floor in an offense that we know is going to pass because A, they can't get a lead, and B, they can't run the ball.
It's a terrific matchup, assuming he plays, of course.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I really feel like the entire offense tanks.
Yeah.
Like they all go down the hill
Get me
despite
away
the
from
good
the Falcons,
matchup.
otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Mine, though, we're going to get really frisky here.
Ooh.
To me, it just seems like everyone's going up to Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, and I'm sort of worried about their matchups, not from efficiency standpoint, but for the fact that the opposing offenses against them may not be able to answer whatsoever, which could kill game script. So I've been looking at a lot of cheap quarterbacks this week, and another one who has just been hated for all the right reasons so far, is in a good matchup, and that's Mitchell Trubisky. Yes, I understand you don't want to play Mitchell Trubisky, but the Chargers defense still median in pressure rate. And then you look at what they just allowed to Ryan Tannehill. As I said, over 300 yards just on only 29 passing attempts. But this Chargers defense have only played over the past month Josh Rosen, Joe Flacco, Devlin Hodges, and Tannehill. And that's why their defense the past month has been masked and looks somewhat good, because they haven't played a challenge just yet. And Mitchell Trubisky, may not be a challenge, but the fact is he has a rushing floor. There is an obvious target tree between Allen Robinson, who continues leading this team in air yards and dominates no matter what quarterback's under center, and then Anthony Miller, who also saw an increase, played over 80% of the snaps, ran around on 80% of Trubisky's dropbacks last week, and the Bears now have slowly lead the league in passing play. I'm going to get here. Passing play rate in neutral game script in one-score situations, because they can't run the ball whatsoever. This is not a game they're going to go out and try to run the ball. They're going to pass, and I think it's a good matchup to pass in.
I agree the Chargers defense is overrated.
It is very overrated, yes. But I like how you don't agree that you should play Mitchell Trubisky.
To each their own.
It's okay. But let's go ahead and jump on a couple questions here as we go into the running back section. So, Chase Edmonds or Melvin Gordon? Jim T. Wynn asks.
I think it's Edmonds, even if David Johnson suits up. I mean, we talked about this last week. I mean, all right, I understand you had to play David Johnson after Schefter came out and said he was going to be active and all that, but
we all still hurt from that.
Yeah, but even watching that Week 6 game, one of our takeaways on the early week podcast was David Johnson does not look 100%. I mean, he's a running back dealing with a back injury that's apparently very severe. So even if he's active, we're going to see Edmonds in a 40 to 50% snap roll, I think, and it's the potential for much more. We saw last week 94%. That was the highest mark of any running back. I know they've signed Alfred Morris and Zach Zenner, but at the same time, it's maybe a little bad example in Houston because the way that's worked out. But it reminds me of when the Texans signed Carlos Hyde and we weren't as concerned with Duke Johnson because, look, this is not a pass catcher. Right. And that's what it is with Zenner and Morris. They're not pass catchers, and for that reason, at the very least, Edmonds should kind of keep that receiving game floor, even if the backup's a little more involved than we think.
I think he's sprinkling David Johnson. And I mean sprinkle because the probabilities of his floor, just because he's going to have zero ownership and still may return to that starting role. But yeah, it's still a good spot for either. And David Johnson is honestly their best receiver. Chase Edmonds ran for as many 20-plus yard runs last week as David Johnson has his entire career. So there's reason to get both involved moving forward.
Their rushing attack has been awesome this year. And it's mostly been Cliff Kingsbury scheming it up. I know Kyler in the passing game haven't jumped out to the start, a lot of people thought, but for what he's done with that offensive line, the run game, just scheming them into success has been awesome.
Why don't you go ahead and move on with our running back building block. And again, you can follow along with the toolkit at rotoworld.com/DFS. 30% off, I believe, now, too.
I don't know what Tevin Coleman did to DraftKings to deserve these salary drops. I mean, it's absurd. He was $5,600 last week on the road against Washington. Now he's coming home against a Carolina defense that funnels production in the run game. Number 3 in the pass DVOA. Number 30 in rush DVOA. He's only $5K. I mean, look, he's in a committee. I understand that. Matt Breida is going to stay involved. With that said, he's had 16 touches in each of the last 3 games because the 49ers run the ball more than anyone. We have seen a little bit of a pass game floor with Juszczyk out. Obviously, last week it wasn't there because, again, no one could pass the ball last week. They were playing in 5 feet of mud. So it's one of these situations where it's a committee, but it's a 2-back committee and a very good offense. We can live with that. It's not 3 or 4 backs, and he's just underpriced. I mean, we're seeing Devontae Freeman, Royce Freeman, Melvin Gordon, James White. These guys are all priced above him, and I just don't agree with it. I think Tevin is $1,000 too cheap, and I'm going to fire him up in way too many lineups.
It's fair. I'm just picking the easy way out, and it's because Ty Johnson now is going to get a majority of work, I assume, without Kerryon Johnson available. Yes, Paul Perkins and or Trey Carson could be active, but the fact is, for 1 week at least, barring a random trade before kickoff, Ty Johnson last week saw all his usage upped, got all of the work inside the 10, whereas J.D. McKissick stayed in a pass-catching role and only saw a slight increase in routes run, but other than that, he just played the same exact role. They leaned on Ty Johnson. I understand this is a coaching staff, and I'm concerned about it, that used C.J. Anderson the first 2 games of the season. So, yes, that's a worrisome part of playing Ty Johnson. But I think that's why you fade him in tournaments and in cash as one of the easier, cheaper backs to roster. If not, like the only confident back under 5K, you just plug him in and don't worry about it.
Yeah, at that price point, you got to. So, all right, Ty Johnson is our number 4 back in dollars per fantasy points. My GPP running back is the number 2 value back this week, and it's going against your Trubisky call. I like David Montgomery in this bounce back spot. He has to get more than 2 carries moving forward. Now, I'm going to go out on a big-time limb there and estimate that. But look, I mean, up until last week, he still had a 46% snap rate last week. Before that, he was at 65%, 69%, 54%. Mike Davis is gone. Like, he has played 5 snaps since week 3 total on offense. So,
healthy scratches along the way as well.
Yes, it's a 2-back committee, and like, look, Tariq Cohen had a comical, I think it was like 9 catches for 19 yards like last week. I think if there's any takeaway from that game, it's that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be just checking the ball down to Tariq Cohen this freaking much and give the ball to Dave Montgomery a little more. We did see Matt Nagy come out and say, guys, I'm not an idiot. We need to run the ball more. Kind of funny, but I think everything he said about the Chargers defense in the secondary applies even maybe more so their front 7. We've seen this year each of Kerryon Johnson, Derrick Henry, Philip Lindsay, Marlon Mack, and James Conner clear 16 points per reception. And we don't even need Montgomery to clear 16 points. We just need him to clear like 8 or 9 because he only costs $4,400. So home back. I know the Bears have, everyone saw that game. It was disgusting. Trubisky has been disgusting, but they're going to be better than I think what we saw. At least a little bit, and for that price, sign me up.
The Bengals, for my tournament play, the Bengals rushing defense has now allowed 7 RB1 rushing performances, fantasy performances on the year. And Fournette, I know, didn't get the bonus 100 yards last week, but he was also stuffed on 4th and 1. It should have been so much more. And by the way, that's a guy who now 2nd in the league in rushing and only 1 touchdown. Like, the regression's coming. But you know who gets the Bengals this week? It is the Rams and Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
Yes, hobbled Todd Gurley played a season-low 60% snaps last week. However, he still got a touch on 46% of said 60% of snaps. And he's being used heavily in the red zone. Just last week, once they got inside the 20, 10 touches. When they get inside the 10, it's not a rotation. They clearly take any other back off the field and put Gurley in. And that scoring opportunity and touchdown equity alone keeps him as a tremendous play against the Bengals. If Darrell Henderson hits in this one, because I don't think we're going to get Malcolm Brown, didn't practice yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday. And remember, they fly to London. So I doubt that Brown even makes the trip. Darrell Henderson can absolutely hit in garbage time because this Bengals offensive line and offense and team as a whole is just bad. But Gurley, if they get to a score in which Henderson comes in and plays, it's because Gurley helps them get there. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, I like that call too. The Bengals have been like, well, didn't the 49ers have like 3 running backs in the top 20 when they played them?
Yeah. Before we move on to wide receiver though, Roman Gabriel has a question. Let's assume Kamara sits for a second. Rank these 3: Latavius Murray, Fournette, or Carson.
No. Oh, wow, okay. That's actually kind of tough.
So you're nitpicking. So since we're talking about DFS here, we have to actually factor in the salaries.
That's true.
However, I still go Latavius Murray, and I do know the dams are about to break on Fournette's touchdown regression, but still, Murray was a bell cow without Kamara, and now gets a Cardinals defense that still was spiked by Saquon Barkley last week on a much worse offensive line. So yeah, just Murray is going to get 30+ touches in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's Murray, and the big thing, like we've talked about this year, Fournette and Carson having surprising pass game floors.
Yep.
That's what Murray had last week. He had 5 catches. It was only I forget the exact number. It was like his 6th time in like 90 career games or something like that. He's had at least 5 catches. So look, he's not Alvin Kamara as a receiver, but he can catch screens and dump downs, and Sean Payton's proven to be willing to give him those. So yeah, especially in DFS, Murray.
And we go ahead and move on to our building blocks wide receivers, and I want to start with someone, because you mentioned Tevin Coleman's price, but I just want to talk about Mike Williams' price.
Ooh.
Because on DraftKings in particular, the value is just absolutely crazy. Like, what did this guy do to get ranked as? And I'm just going to read off the screen here because it's hilarious. Jerron Brown, same price. Deebo Samuel, Darius Slayton, Mohamed Sanu, who knows how much he's going to play on a new team. And then, yeah, it's crazy that Deebo Samuel, come on now, Deebo Samuel's not even playing, and Mike Williams, who has just under 10 targets per game the past 3 weeks, continues getting air yards, is absolutely due for positive TD regression in a game that I do think shoots out against the Bears. He's just an easy price point cash game. Lock it in and forget about it.
4K is egregious.
It's offensive. It really is.
Yeah, he's another guy that's also due for touchdown regression. I think he's like third in the league in most targets without a score. But one guy that isn't due for regression because he's been balling out all year and people just don't really seem to be noticing or caring all that much is my guy John Smokey Brown. And he has the weekly smash spot against the Eagles defense that, again, we have seen them just again and again get absolutely roasted by wide receiver ones. He has, they have given up, let me see, 150 plus yards since week 1 last season to Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Corey Davis, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. Like, it's not just that wide receiver ones are having good games against them. They're blowing up against the Eagles continuously. And like, I think we've put in John Brown this like boomer bust label, like dating back to his time in Arizona. That's not the case anymore. Only John Brown and Michael Thomas have at least 50 receiving yards in every single game this season. We know he's got the blow-up factor. He's actually got a floor now, and, he's balling out. So fire him up against.
And we know Philadelphia's defense is a joke. Like, yes, they got Jalen Mills back, but whenever people are citing that Jalen Mills makes the difference, that's over-analysis of personnel.
Exactly.
We have a lot of Sanu questions, so let's just go ahead and answer for Joe 1 and talk about Sanu in general. Metcalf or Sanu?
Metcalf for now, just because, Metcalf has like one of the most fantasy-friendly target shares in the league because everything he's getting is downfield or in the red zone. Him and Lockett, I think, are only like 2 of 10 receivers with at least 9 red zone targets this year. So Russ has shown full faith in the rookie. Hasn't, it's been like a 50% catch rate so far. Hasn't been without a fair share of hiccups. But at this point, still Metcalf. I'm just worried about Sanu having limited snaps. But very interesting moving forward because I do think they have Sanu in that Josh Gordon / Rob Gronkowski, big-bodied kind of red zone threat role. We didn't see Gordon quite seize that the way I think we wanted him to. But still Sanu, like he's a different type of receiver than they have anywhere else on the roster. So I think we're going to see him eventually get, somewhere in the 5 to 8 target range, with a lot of those being near the goal line because they get a second-round pick for him.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get him back in the draft.
They tried to trade for him in the draft.
Clearly they have a significant role in mind for him.
The only thing about Sanu is that, one, people are comparing the situation to Antonio Brown's, and that's just completely wrong. This is not a guy they're going to force feed. It's a guy that fits into their offense, yes, but I don't know if he fits in immediately because remember, their bye is in week 10. I would think they take the 14 days to integrate him into like an 80% snap rate as opposed to just running him out here right now. And yes, Julian Edelman has averaged over 2 air yards per target more as an outside receiver. So Sanu comes in and plays the slot over Jacoby Myers. I just don't think he's heavily involved in this game, and I don't think they need him to be.
Right.
So Sanu's not really someone that popped up on my radar, but I know a lot of people have been talking about him.
For sure. Okay, so now looking at my GP wide receiver. I didn't love your Tannehill call, but I do like his receiver, and that is Mr. A.J. Brown. This guy is a stud. Look, I'm not a huge...
You can play him with Tannehill.
Exactly. I'm not a huge college film guy or anything like that. I prefer to let them get on their team, watch them play preseason, go through that. But every time I've seen A.J. Brown get the ball this season, he is electric. His run after the catch ability is absurd. He looks huge. He's athletic. He's got crazy stiff arm. And the only problem with him up until these last few weeks was just he wasn't playing that much. He didn't even play 50% of the offensive snaps until the last 3 games because Tajay freaking Sharp has to be on the field more often. That's not the case anymore. Again, he's been a full-time receiver each of the last 3 weeks, and now he's getting the targets. Tannehill's target distribution last week was Corey Davis, 11 targets, A.J. Brown, 10. Then we had a hump at 8, and everyone else was below 5. So clearly they want to feature him. Everything he said about the separation, Tannehill is willing to throw the ball to his studs now, unlike Mariota. And yeah, when we have a situation where it's a wide receiver at 4,100 and we have an upgrade at the quarterback position in an amazing matchup, the only defense that's been worse than the Eagles against wide receivers this year is the Buccaneers. Let's do it.
So if I'm playing Tannehill and A.J. Brown, I need someone to run it back with. And Chris Godwin is the obvious answer. I understand that. But Mike Evans went away into the bye, having received 17 targets to Godwin's 10. Mike Evans didn't hit, yes, but he still has 150 more air yards than Chris Godwin, and yet on the season has 55 fewer fantasy points. This is all positive regression that's going to hit. And as we know, Mike Evans is a clutter scorer. Like when it hits, it hits. And I want him in this matchup. It's a terrific matchup. And again, I think this game shoots out.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Mike Evans is our fifth highest projected, or I'm sorry, he's in our top 10 highest projected receivers. He's looking good. And yeah, he actually, look, Marshawn Lattimore shut him down. He had that goose egg line, but 3 of his last 4 games have all been fine. Like, he's been very productive, so it's going to come.
JJ Esch asks a quick one. Deshaun Hamilton, viable as an almost minimum, basically a minimum price punt. And I will answer, I started my week with Deshaun Hamilton in cash lineups. I'm not sure I finish it with like that, but I'm totally fine with it. Like, Emmanuel Sanders' absent is not Mohamed Sanu's absence. Emmanuel Sanders was number 2 on targets and air yards on the team. And now Deshaun Hamilton should soak up more of that role as an every down slot wideout, a guy who averaged 8.5 targets over the final 4 games of the season last year when Sanders got injured. So I do think the trickle down affects him the most because Courtland Sutton was already a baller. Courtland Sutton is upgraded, yes, but he just moves from like wide receiver 20 on the year to wide receiver top 15 perhaps at his ceiling. Deshaun Hamilton moves from off the radar to now a wide receiver 3 in flex play and yes, a cash game option.
PPR wide receiver 22 in that stretch where he was getting those targets. And I understand Case Keenum versus Joe Flacco, different quarterbacks. But, I mean, even after week 2 and 3 this year, the Broncos coaches were saying, like, we want to get Deshaun more involved. We said, well, how's that going to happen with Emmanuel Sanders and Courtland Sutton there? Well, Sanders is gone. And they don't have, I mean, Tim Patrick's on the PUP. Juwan Winfrey is going to come up and kind of compete with something named Fred Brown for that number 3 role. Like, Deshaun is their number 2 receiver now, clear cut.
Another game completely, though, as we move on to our tight ends, I want to talk about is this Philly-Buffalo game. And as he mentioned earlier, we were looking at John Brown, yes. But I like Zach Ertz a lot in this matchup with Deshaun Jackson still sidelined. Dallas Goedert has been really good the past month, tight end 10 the past month. However, Zach Ertz is still due to bounce back without Deshaun Jackson. On the year, number 1 overall in targets among tight ends still, and 2nd overall in red zone targets, and yet only 1 touchdown so far. I would imagine that this opportunity that still exists helps out Zach Ertz in this matchup in particular tremendously because against Buffalo's corners is not where you're going to attack. Alshon Jeffrey's floor is much lower in this game, which I would assume then makes Zach Ertz the play.
Yeah, I like the Ertz call. He's due for some positive aggression as well. I'm going with Gerald Everett. I think he's just a little bit too cheap at 4,300. And again, for cash lineups especially, I just don't see a cheap tight end this week that we can like comfortably try a roster. But Everett, all of a sudden, he's got a target floor. I mean, he's had 8 targets at least in 3 of his last 4 games. He didn't have that many once in his previous, X amount of career games. So Tyler Higbee has only had 7 targets combined in the last 3 games. I know they paid the guy earlier in the year. He's a good blocker, but Gerald Everett is their future guy. And the big difference is, like, look, Todd Gurley is a great receiver, but they haven't used him this year as a receiver. The Rams, only the Ravens have thrown their running backs fewer times per game than the Rams this season. And the difference has been going to Gerald Everett. And he's very good. We've all heard the Sean McVay, Jordan Reed comparisons with him. And during this stretch over the last 4 games, he's been the PPR tight end 2. Yep. And even over the season, he's a PPR tight end 9. So I want to attack this Bengals matchup in all shapes and sizes with different players, and because they're 28th in a DVOA against the tight end position. Fire up your wide receivers, your Todd Gurley, your Gerald Everett against them. Like, the Rams can easily score 30-plus before the end of 3 quarters.
I think that's why Brandon Cook's ceiling has been limited the past month, because Gerald Everett now is leading them in air yards. Or not leading them in air yards, but he's number 1 among all tight ends in air yards, essentially taking away from Cook's how he hit his ceiling previously, historically, with the Rams. Gerald Everett's a tremendous play. And then this is a new segment that we're just going to introduce on the fly because we have a few stat questions.
Okay.
So let's just talk about favorite stack, and I'll get us started because it's one I was thinking about at the beginning of the week, and it is Ryan Tannehill, Corey Davis, and Mike Evans. Running it back.
I like Josh Allen, Smokey Brown, and Zach Ertz.
Okay, I like that one too. Yeah. And then also, if you want to look at Matthew Stafford, Kenny Golladay, and Saquon Barkley.
Galladay bounce back.
Galladay bounce back is way too easy.
I was saying before, Kenny Golladay is the most fantasy-friendly target share in the league. I forget who I said had it before, but That's
at least 8 targets every game until last week's 2-target fluke.
He's number 1 in targets inside the 10-yard line and only behind Will Fuller in deep balls. Like, Stafford likes throwing deep, and he likes throwing the contested coverage and Kenny Galladay.
Well, does that mean you're starting our lineup as we usually do, building with the DFS
Hold on. We got GPP.
Oh, did I already move on too fast?
It's all good.
Okay.
We got 2 cheap ones, though. I'll go first. Dallas Goedert, 2,800. You talked about him, like, just balling out. But again, tight end 10 over the last couple of weeks. Again, 2,800, like, he just hasn't been priced up yet. And as long as Deshaun Jackson remains out, they're going to keep the guy on the field in almost a full-time role. He's not been a backup. He's been a starter. He's playing between 60 and 70% of the snaps. And we all know how talented the guy is. Keep firing him up. It's just the worst thing about playing Goddard or Ertz is trying to figure out who catches the ball when you see him down the field.
You first brought that to everyone's attention.
It's still annoying me, but hey, we're getting through it.
I'm keeping it cheap as well, and it is Jonnu Smith, who was quietly in on 86% of the Titans snaps last week because Delaney Walker went out with that ankle injury. If Walker, who hasn't practiced yet this week, is out, I think Jonnu Smith is in a tremendous spot. Yes, Anthony Ferkser is also getting involved, but Jonnu Smith still ran a route. 18 routes on Tannehill's 32 dropbacks, 56% routes run. So he's still being heavily involved in the passing game, and it's just a cheap option and a really good matchup.
Agreed.
And now, since I moved on too fast last time, we can start building our lineup, and I'm going to go first, and I'm going to take Mike Evans because I am that confident in that bounce back spot. He went away for 1 week off of 17 targets. Give me that.
Mike Evans is going to blow up soon. I like we'll stay with the Mikes. I like your Mike Williams call. He's just too cheap. I've maintained that Mike Williams is one of these wide receiver 2s where if you put him on almost any other team, like, he can be a clear-cut wide receiver 1. He's one of those guys where, like, when the volume comes, he keeps producing. It's not like, one of these 3-point shooters in basketball where if you bump their time up 10 minutes, all of a sudden they kind of crash and burn. The more you give Mike Williams the ball, the better he does, and he's going to blow up eventually.
Okay, in that case then, I am going to go to running backs. And I am going to take, there are quite a few good options here as we build our lineup so far. We only have Mike Evans and Mike Williams. And then I'm going to take, let's just go ahead and get Todd Gurley in there. I want to stuff him in there.
Okay, I'm going a little cheaper. Again, put Tevin Coleman in all your lineups. Cash, GP. He's not even going to have high ownership from what I've seen so far. And again, I just don't understand how. Like, this Panthers defense is good, but it's their secondary and their pass rush. Like, their run defense has not been good because they've sacrificed, like, Thomas Davis for Shaq Thompson, which is good. It helps them against the pass, but they're not facing a passing team. They're facing the most run-heavy team. Like, this is an awful matchup for the Carolina defense, and Tevin Coleman's going to be the guy to take advantage of it.
Okay, so far, Todd Gurley, Tevin Coleman, if you're following along at home in the DFS toolkit, Mike Evans, and Mike Williams. So you can just tell me, would you rather go the Bears-Chargers stack or the Bucs-Titans stack? You either get Trubisky or Tannehill, buddy.
I'm going Bucs Titans.
Okay, we're going Tannehill.
There's sneaky shootout potential in that game.
Yeah,
like, the pace.
It is such a good matchup for both offenses. I understand there's a lot of bad quarterback play in that game, but
the pace isn't incredible. But, like, there's really good skill position players on both sides, and neither of those defenses are anything to fear. So I think I did see there might be some rain in that forecast. We'll check the wind.
That one, yeah.
We'll check the wind.
Always
I
win.
know you're always on the wind, but yeah.
I gotta calm everyone down. Rain doesn't matter unless it's like 20, like whatever that was in Washington and San Francisco.
Yeah, my
that was rain. That counts.
If we got mud up to freaking people's knees, that's not good either.
So we have 21.9 left, and there's a wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense option. And I know you do like to give the people a cheap defense.
Man,
it doesn't have to be this week. But I know you do like.
I know. I was looking at the Bengals at 1,700 are.
Boy, man, that's getting frisky.
Yeah. Only in like one GPP lineup should you be doing this.
Right.
Here's my thing, though. Jared Goff has been under a ton of pressure this year. And like every week in my Mismatch Manifesto article, I pull the offense's pressure rate, add the defense's pressure rate, and see who has the best matchup. And like Jared Goff has the worst pressure matchup this week. And again, at 1,700, like we don't need them to do much of anything. It's just more of a method to get higher priced people into position. With that said, I like the Bills at 3,000 as my defense this week.
Going up.
I can't do it on the Bengals. I tried. I wanted to, John.
We don't have any Eagles, and we don't have to play any Eagles. But I will take another one of your players.
Okay.
And go A.J. Brown with this stack. And from there, you can have the last pick. Or that's actually it, isn't it? Yep, that's it. So, quickly, what we do here, and we always enter this just to watch our money burn for the people. Ryan Tannehill, Todd Gurley, Tevin Coleman, Mike Evans, Mike Williams, A.J. Brown, a lot of value, and Bills. So you have 14.8 left for flex, and McCaffrey's like 9K across sites, and a tight end. And we'll just leave that on them.
Enjoy. You're going to get 2 ballers with that money.
Any super quick thoughts on the Sunday night game? Because Greg Zeus asks, can you trust Watkins or Williams?
Definitely don't trust. We're assuming Patrick Mahomes isn't going to actually play.
Let's assume he's not going to play.
No, you can't trust Watkins. Come on. And Damian Williams?
Yeah.
Heck, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Damian Williams worked as their number 3 running back. Like, it is Shady's backfield now, as it should have been all season.
I put Damian Williams on the waiver wire drop list proudly.
Yes.
I was like, the best way to use Damian Williams in fantasy right now is to drop him for your opponent and let your opponent start him, and then just play against him, honestly.
No, you're not wrong. I think the only Chiefs that you can honestly you should consider starting right now without Mahomes are Tyreek and Kelsey and Shady.
And with that being said, hopefully we got you started on this Week 8 slate. We will be back next week, but until then, thank you for tuning in to RotoWorld's DFS Building Blocks.